My name is Lucy. I am 24 years old. And I recently purchased my first home after being self-supporting since the age of 16. Through countless double shifts and sacrificed vacations, I built my future brick by brick. That dream became a nightmare when my own mother stood in my backyard and screamed that I had stolen my brother's future. However, nothing could have prepared me for the legal documents that arrived a week later. My parents were suing me for my own hard-earned property. If you are watching this and have ever had family try to take credit for your success, leave a comment below letting me know where you are from, hit like and subscribe. Because what happened next proves that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. I grew up in Millfield, one of those small Midwest towns where everyone knows your business before you do. My family appeared normal from the outside, a typical middle-class life with my father, Thomas, working as an accountant at a local firm, and my mother, Diane, running the household with an iron fist clad in expensive taste. But within our home, the dynamic was crystal clear from my earliest memories. My younger brother, Kevin, was the golden child, and I was the afterthought. Every achievement of mine was measured against what Kevin might someday accomplish. I brought home straight A's. That's nice, but did you see how Kevin scored the winning goal? I won the science fair. Kevin got invited to a birthday party at the mayor's house. The pattern was relentless and exhausting. I remember sitting at our kitchen table in 10th grade, nervously asking my parents if they could contribute $300 for a school trip to Washington, D.C. My history teacher had specifically recommended me for this honors program. The silence that followed still echoes in my memory. "We're saving for Kevin's future," my father finally stated, not even looking up from his newspaper. "College isn't going to pay for itself, and he has real potential." "What about my future?" I asked quietly. My mother sighed as if I were being particularly difficult. "Lucy, you know your brother has special opportunities ahead. You're smart enough to figure something out for yourself." That night, I cried into my pillow. But by morning, a determination had crystallized within me. If my future wasn't worth their investment, I would build it myself without taking a single cent from them ever again. The next day after school, I walked into every business in our small downtown. By sunset, I had a job waiting tables at Darlene's diner, starting that weekend. Darlene herself hired me, a tough but fair woman who became one of the first adults to genuinely recognize my potential. Those first few months were brutal. I went straight from school to the diner, worked until closing, and then stayed up late finishing homework. My grades dipped slightly at first, which my parents immediately noted, but I adjusted my schedule, eliminating any social life to maintain my academic standing while working nearly 30 hours a week. On my 16th birthday, instead of asking for gifts, I went to the local credit union and opened my first bank account without my parents. The teller looked surprised when I insisted no parental names be added, but something in my expression must have communicated my seriousness. Earning my own money changed everything. The first time I counted $1,000 in my savings, I sat on my bed simply staring at the bank statement in disbelief. This was mine. I had earned every penny. The pride I felt was something my parents had never given me. "This unnecessary stubbornness is getting old, Lucy," my mother commented when I started buying my own clothes, school supplies, and personal items. "We're your parents. This is what we're supposed to do. You made it clear where the family resources need to go," I replied calmly. "I'm respecting your decision." That answer infuriated her, but what could she say? That she was angry I wasn't being a financial burden? At the diner, one of our regular customers was Mr. Patterson, a retired financial advisor who always left generous tips. He noticed me reading a library book about personal finance during a slow shift and started sharing wisdom about investing, saving, and building credit. These lunch counter lessons were more valuable than anything I learned in school. "Most people your age think about how to spend money," he told me. "You're already thinking about how to grow it. That mindset is your biggest asset." By senior year, I was working 30-hour weeks while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I learned to function on 6 hours of sleep and became an expert at maximizing every minute of my day. When graduation came, I had nearly $10,000 saved and a partial scholarship to State University, enough to make my college dreams possible if I continued working. The joint graduation party my parents threw still stings when I think about it. It was supposedly for both me and Kevin, who was finishing junior year with merely passing grades. Yet the celebration featured a slideshow of mostly Kevin's achievements, with my graduation as a seeming afterthought. The cake even read, "Congratulations, Lucy and future star Kevin." I smiled through it all, knowing that my bank account represented a freedom they couldn't take away. State University wasn't my dream school. But with my partial academic scholarship and in-state tuition, it was financially feasible. I had calculated exactly how much I needed to earn to cover the remaining tuition, books, housing, and food. My detailed spreadsheets would have impressed any accountant. including my father, though he never asked to see them during orientation week. While other freshmen were partying and decorating dorm rooms, I was applying for jobs. I kept my position at Darlene's on weekends, making the 2-hour drive back to Millfield every Friday night. By the second week of classes, I had secured a position at the campus library that worked around my course schedule. My housing situation wasn't ideal, a 5-bedroom house shared with 6 other students, but at $350 a month including utilities. It was the most economical option. I took the converted sunroom, which lacked privacy but had the lowest rent. The first winter was brutally cold with the drafty windows. But I bought thermal curtains from a thrift store and wore layers to bed. Meanwhile, Kevin started his senior year of high school with a brand new car my parents gifted him to help with college applications. The irony wasn't lost on me as I waited at bus stops in the rain. My college social life consisted almost entirely of friendships formed with other working students. We understood each other's reality, covering shifts when someone had an exam, sharing textbooks to save money, and celebrating small victories like finding free food at campus events. Lisa from my statistics class became my closest friend after we bonded over both working 2 jobs while carrying full course loads. "Some people party through college," she said once, "but we're building something. I can feel it." The contrast between my college experience and Kevin's became impossible to ignore once he started at Westfield University, a private college with substantial tuition that my parents somehow afforded. His social media showed fraternity parties, spring break trips, and not a single part-time job. Every time I called home, which became increasingly rare, my mother would gush about Kevin's connections with prominent alumni and his position on the lacrosse team. "Have you joined any clubs, Lucy?" she would ask, as if my 60-hour weeks between work and school left room for extracurriculars. It was during my sophomore year that I discovered my passion for real estate through an urban economics class. Professor Jenkins, a former developer who had entered academia after a successful career, noticed my enthusiasm and became a mentor. She stayed after class to answer my endless questions about property values, development trends, and investment strategies. "Most students see real estate as buildings," she told me. "You see the mathematical patterns and human stories behind them. That's rare." With Professor Jenkins' encouragement, I added extra courses during summer terms, working full-time at a local property management company while taking classes. The exhaustion was sometimes overwhelming. There were nights I cried from pure fatigue, questioning if this path was worth the sacrifice. But the alternative, being financially dependent on parents who clearly favored my brother, seemed far worse. Holiday visits home grew increasingly strained. Thanksgiving of my junior year, I listened to 20 minutes of Kevin's adventures at a Westfield alumni networking event before anyone asked about my studies or work. When I mentioned my internship offer from Horizon Realty, a respected firm in the capital city, my mother simply nodded and changed the subject back to Kevin's lacrosse scholarship. The Christmas that year was particularly painful. Under the tree sat several large boxes for Kevin containing expensive electronics, designer clothes, and even ski equipment for a trip my parents had planned for him. My gift was a generic sweater, still with the clearance tag partially visible where someone had tried to peel it off. I wore it with a smile and focused on getting through the day. That spring, I secured a prestigious internship at Horizon Realty, working under Terry Maxwell, one of the top agents in the state. The position paid well enough that I could reduce my library hours slightly, giving me just enough breathing room to maintain my GPA. Terry taught me the practical side of real estate that complemented my academic knowledge, from negotiation tactics to property assessment. It was Terry who first told me about first-time home buyer programs that helped people with good credit but limited down payments achieve home ownership. After a long discussion about my financial situation, she looked me straight in the eyes. "Set a goal date," she said firmly. "With your savings rate and career trajectory, you could own property by 25 if you're strategic." I set the goal for 25, but privately decided to aim for 24. Every decision I made from that point forward was filtered through this objective. Spring break trips were replaced by overtime shifts. New clothes were substituted with thrift store finds. Dining out was traded for meal prepping in bulk. When graduation approached, I felt both pride and resignation, knowing my parents would likely miss it. Sure enough, 2 weeks before the ceremony, my mother called to explain they couldn't attend because Kevin had a lacrosse tournament that could be scouted by professional teams. I accepted their excuse with practiced graciousness. While Lisa and my other friends stepped in to celebrate with me, what my parents didn't know, because they never asked, was that I graduated with a business degree, minored in finance, carried minimal student loans, and had already accepted a full-time position at Horizon Realty starting immediately after graduation. As I moved the tassel on my cap from right to left, I wasn't just completing my education. I was stepping fully into a self-made future they had never imagined for me. My position at Horizon Realty started as an assistant to Terry Maxwell, but her mentorship fast-tracked my progress. While other new graduates were still learning professional basics, I was already familiar with the systems, clients, and procedures from my internship. 6 months in, I passed my real estate license exam and began taking on my own clients under Terry's supervision. Homeownership remained my fixed goal. I rented a studio apartment that was barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette so small I could touch both walls simultaneously. The building had maintenance issues and noisy neighbors, but the rent was $500 below market rate, allowing me to save the difference each month. My furniture consisted of a futon that doubled as my bed, a desk I found on the curb, and 2 folding chairs. My mother would have been horrified by the minimalism. But every dollar saved brought me closer to my goal. To accelerate my savings, I started a side hustle helping graduate students and young professionals find apartments. While I couldn't collect commissions on rentals as a new agent without bringing them through Horizon, I could charge consultation fees for creating customized lists of options matching their criteria. Word of mouth kept me busy on evenings and weekends. "You're working too hard," Terry commented one day after finding me at the office at 8 p.m. "I admire your drive. But don't burn out before you hit your prime." I appreciated her concern but explained my home ownership goal, instead of trying to dissuade me. She introduced me to Sandra Wilson, a senior agent who specialized in investment properties and wealth building. Sandra became my second mentor, teaching me about building equity, property appreciation patterns, and how to identify undervalued homes with potential. She had started with nothing in her 20s and now owned 12 income-producing properties by age 50. "The secret," Sandra told me, "isn't just finding clients. It's becoming your own best client first." With every commission check, I increased my savings, watching my down payment fund grow month by month. I researched first-time home buyer programs obsessively, comparing interest rates, down payment assistance options, and qualifying criteria. By 23, 6 months ahead of schedule, I had saved enough for a modest down payment. Plus closing costs and emergency reserves, the house hunting process began with absolute clarity about my parameters. I needed a structurally sound property with cosmetic issues that would lower the price but could be improved gradually. Location was crucial, a neighborhood stable enough for appreciation, but not so established that prices were inflated. After touring 27 houses, I found it, a 1960s 3-bedroom ranch with good bones but dated everything else. The avocado green kitchen, pink bathroom tile, and wood paneling had scared off other buyers. But I saw past the cosmetic issues to the solid foundation, new roof, and spacious yard. Most importantly, it was in an area showing early signs of revitalization with new businesses opening nearby. The asking price was at the top of my budget. But armed with market research and comparable sales data, I submitted an offer 12% below asking. After a brief negotiation, we settled at 7% below, contingent on inspection. The sellers were an elderly couple moving to a retirement community who appreciated my letter explaining my journey to homeownership, the day I signed the closing documents. Just 2 months after my 24th birthday, I sat in the title company office, fighting back tears. The agent handling the paperwork assumed I was nervous. "Don't worry," she said kindly. "The first house is always scary, but you're making a great investment." "I'm not worried," I replied. "I'm just proud." Moving in was a simple process given my minimal possessions. The house echoed with emptiness those first few weeks, but gradually I began filling it with carefully selected second-hand furniture. Every Saturday became project day as I taught myself to paint, replace light fixtures, and refinish cabinets using YouTube tutorials and workshops at the local hardware store. My parents knew I had moved because I'd mentioned it briefly during one of our infrequent phone calls. But they had never asked for my address. Still, occasionally I would spot my mother's car driving slowly past the house. She never stopped to visit, and I never mentioned noticing her drive-bys. Kevin, now a college senior, occasionally texted asking for small loans that I politely declined. His messages never included questions about my life or career. As the months passed, the house transformed. The avocado kitchen became a modern white and gray space. The pink bathroom turned into a spa-like retreat with simple updates. Each change built both the property's value and my sense of accomplishment. Real estate colleagues who visited were impressed by the increasing equity I was creating through sweat equity alone. After nearly a year of ownership and significant improvements, I decided to host a barbecue to celebrate both the anniversary and the completion of my backyard landscaping project. Despite my reservations, I invited my parents and Kevin, along with extended family, friends, and colleagues who had supported my journey. "Are you sure about inviting your parents?" Lisa asked when helping me plan. "You've created this beautiful life without them." "They're still family," I said. And maybe seeing what I've accomplished will change something. As the day of the barbecue approached, I threw myself into preparations. The house was immaculate, the new patio furniture arranged perfectly, and the menu planned to impress without appearing too extravagant. Part of me hoped my parents would finally see me, really see what I had accomplished on my own, another part braced for their indifference. Nothing could have prepared me for what actually happened. The morning of the barbecue dawned sunny and warm, perfect weather for an outdoor gathering. I had been up since 6 a.m., marinating meats, preparing side dishes, and arranging flowers from my newly planted garden. The house had never looked better, with every renovation project complete and personal touches that made it distinctly mine. My anxiety built as the clock ticked toward the 2 p.m. start time. Lisa arrived an hour early to help with final preparations, her steady presence calming my nerves. "Whatever happens with your family today," she said while arranging a veggie platter, "remember that this is your victory lap. You did this, Lucy. All of it." My Aunt Judy and Uncle Mark arrived next, bearing a housewarming gift of quality tools, for the homeowner who can fix anything, as Uncle Mark put it, with genuine pride in his voice. They had always treated me with the same affection they showed Kevin, one of the few balanced relationships in our extended family. By 2:30, most guests had arrived, except my immediate family. Colleagues from Horizon mingled with my friends, everyone admiring the property's transformation. Sandra Wilson, my mentor, pulled me aside for a champagne toast. "To smart investments and a bright future," she said, clinking glasses with me. "I've been in this business 30 years, and I've rarely seen someone your age with such clarity of purpose." At 3:15, just as I was beginning to think they wouldn't show, my parents' luxury SUV pulled into the driveway with Kevin in the back seat. My mother emerged first, surveying the gathering with the tight smile she reserved for situations she found beneath her standards. My father followed, carrying a small gift bag that looked hastily assembled. Kevin sauntered out last, heading straight toward the food table without greeting anyone. "Lucy," my mother air-kissed near my cheek. "The neighborhood is certainly developing." I had to double-check the address. "It's an up-and-coming area," I replied evenly. "Property values have increased 12% since I bought in." Was her only response as she stepped into the house, immediately scanning for flaws. My father handed me the gift bag with an awkward pat on the shoulder. "Congratulations on the house. It's a cute starter place." Inside the bag was a generic scented candle with the price sticker still attached. I thanked him politely and invited them to explore the house and meet my friends and colleagues. As I gave them a tour, pointing out the improvements I'd made myself. My mother's comments were a steady stream of backhanded compliments. "You painted these cabinets yourself? I suppose that's one way to save money. This bathroom is creative, considering the budget constraints. The spare bedroom would make a nice nursery someday, I suppose. You're probably too focused on work for that sort of thing." I maintained my composure, years of practice allowing her words to roll off more easily than they once had. What I couldn't ignore, however, was overhearing my father talking to my Uncle Mark near the grill. "Kevin's graduation is coming up next month," he was saying. "We're figuring out his next steps. He's considering taking some time to find himself before committing to a career path." "Where will he live during this finding himself period?" Uncle Mark asked, a hint of judgment in his tone. "We always planned for him to move into a family property after college," my father replied vaguely. "Get his footing before facing the real world." This comment confused me deeply. My parents didn't own any investment properties. We had always lived in the same house, and they had never mentioned purchasing another. What family property could he possibly mean? The barbecue portion of the gathering commenced with everyone filling plates and finding seats around the yard. The atmosphere was pleasant, despite the undercurrent of tension from my immediate family. Kevin had already helped himself to 3 beers from the cooler and was loudly telling college stories to anyone who would listen. After everyone had eaten, I clinked my glass to make a toast, thanking everyone for celebrating this milestone with me. "A year ago, I got the keys to this house," I said. "Many people thought it was too ambitious for someone my age, but everyone here supported my vision in some way. This home represents not just a financial investment, but a belief that with hard work and determination, we can create the life we want, regardless of where we start." Most guests raised their glasses in response with murmurs of "here," "here," and "well said." But my mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the patio. "You stole your brother's future," she shouted, pointing directly at me, her face flushed with what appeared to be genuine rage. The yard fell into shocked silence. Even the neighborhood birds seemed to stop chirping. "Mom," I managed to say, completely blindsided, "what are you talking about?" "This house," she continued, voice shaking. "This neighborhood. We've been watching this area for years, planning for Kevin's future. You knew that. You must have known that with your real estate connections." My father stood beside her, nodding. We were waiting for Kevin to finish college before helping him buy his first property. You swooped in with your insider knowledge and took the opportunity we were saving for him. I looked from them to Kevin, who was smirking slightly behind them, then back to my parents, trying to process this bizarre accusation. That's absolutely not true, I finally said. I found this house through my own research. You've never once mentioned any interest in this neighborhood or buying property for Kevin. We shouldn't have had to mention it, my mother snapped. A thoughtful daughter would have consulted with family before making such a selfish move. Kevin stepped forward then, swaying slightly from the alcohol. Yeah, sis. As the son, I should have had first shot at property. It's traditional. The absurdity of the situation might have been comical if it weren't so hurtful. These people had never contributed a dollar to my education, never helped with housing, never even expressed interest in my real estate career. Now they were claiming I had somehow stolen an opportunity that was never discussed with me. I think you should leave, I said quietly but firmly. All of you. You're choosing this house over your family, my mother gasped dramatically. No, I'm choosing my dignity over your revisionist history, I replied. Please go. As they gathered their things amid uncomfortable glances from other guests, my Aunt Judy approached my mother with fire in her eyes. Diane, I've held my tongue for years watching how you treat Lucy, she said loud enough for others to hear. But this is beyond the pale. That girl has worked herself to the bone while you've handed everything to Kevin. You should be ashamed. My mother huffed indignantly but offered no rebuttal as they left. The remaining guests rallied around me, helping clean up while expressing their shock at what they'd witnessed. Family dynamics are complicated, Sandra said gently as the last guests were leaving. But what I saw today wasn't complicated. It was clear-cut emotional manipulation. Don't let it diminish what you've accomplished. After everyone left, I sat alone on my patio, replaying the bizarre confrontation. Had I somehow missed conversations about my parents' investment plans? Was there any truth to their accusation? Deep reflection yielded nothing. This was a narrative they had created to justify their continued favoritism toward Kevin. Now that my success was undeniable and visible, what I couldn't have imagined then was that this public confrontation was just the opening act in a drama that would become far more formal, far more absurd, and ultimately far more liberating than I could have possibly anticipated. The week following the barbecue, I threw myself into work, trying to process the bizarre confrontation with my family. Several clients commented on my distraction during showings, but I blamed it on seasonal allergies rather than explain the truth. Wednesday afternoon, I was in the office preparing documents for a closing when the receptionist called me to the front desk. A stern-faced man in a rumpled suit stood waiting, a manila envelope in hand. Lucy Montgomery? He asked flatly. Yes, that's me, I replied. You've been served, he stated. Thrusting the envelope into my hands before turning to leave, several colleagues witnessed the exchange, their expressions ranging from concern to curiosity. With burning cheeks, I retreated to a private conference room to examine the contents. The legal document inside was almost incomprehensible at first glance. My own parents, Thomas and Diane Montgomery, were suing me, their daughter. The allegations were so outlandish I had to read them 3 times to believe what I was seeing. Count 1, unjust enrichment through exploitation of familial knowledge. Count 2, intentional interference with expected inheritance. Count 3, misappropriation of family opportunity. The complaint alleged that I had deliberately and maliciously used my real estate knowledge to intercept a property investment opportunity, rightfully intended for their son, Kevin Montgomery. It further claimed that I had accessed family connections and resources to secure my position in the real estate industry, thereby owing financial consideration to my parents. The most shocking part came in the relief sought section. My parents were demanding either, 1, the forced sale of my home with all proceeds given to Kevin, or 2, a payment of $200,000. To equalize family resources and compensate for lost opportunity. My hands shook as I read the signature line where both my parents had signed their names to this fictional account of reality. I maintained my composure just long enough to tell my manager I needed the rest of the day off due to a family emergency. In my car in the office parking garage, I finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably until my throat ached and my eyes burned. When the initial shock subsided enough for coherent thought, I called the only person I knew would understand the family dynamics at play, my Aunt Judy, my mother's sister. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. Lucy, this is beyond dysfunctional. This is delusional. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice small. I can't afford an extended legal battle. What if I lose my house? You listen to me, Aunt Judy said firmly. You will not lose your house. This lawsuit is frivolous nonsense. My friend Barbara is an excellent attorney who specializes in family law. I'm calling her right now, and you're meeting her tomorrow. True to her word, Aunt Judy arranged a meeting for the following morning with Barbara Martinez, a formidable attorney with 20 years of experience. Barbara's office projected competence and success without ostentation, much like the woman herself. "I've reviewed the complaint," Barbara said after introductions, a deep furrow between her brows. "In my 20 years of practice, this is one of the most frivolous lawsuits I've encountered. Unfortunately, frivolous doesn't mean we can ignore it." She walked me through the legal process ahead, explaining that while the case had no merit, we would need to formally respond and potentially go to court to have it dismissed. "The good news," Barbara continued, "is that we can countersue for legal fees and potentially for harassment. The bad news is that this will cost money up front." My heart sank as she quoted her retainer fee. It would drain a significant portion of my emergency fund, money I had been saving for further home improvements. "I understand if you need time to consider," Barbara said, noticing my expression. "No," I replied firmly. "I've worked too hard for my home. I'm not letting them take it or extort money from me. I want to fight this." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. Barbara filed our response, denying all allegations and adding a countersuit for legal fees, defamation, and harassment. The financial strain was considerable. Beyond Barbara's fees, the emotional toll affected my work performance, potentially impacting my commissions. I started taking on additional clients on weekends to ensure I could cover all expenses. My colleagues at Horizon rallied around me once they understood the situation. Terry rearranged schedules to give me better listing opportunities, and Sandra referred several clients my way. "Family lawsuits are among the ugliest," Sandra told me during a particularly low moment. "But they eventually end, and you'll be stronger for having stood your ground." An anonymous letter arrived at my office a week after being served. Inside was a handwritten note from a neighbor who lived across from my parents. "Thought you should know your mother drives by your house almost daily taking pictures. Might be relevant to your situation. Stay strong, from someone who admires what you've built." This information was both unsettling and potentially useful for our case. Barbara added it to our growing file of evidence. The most disturbing discovery came when Barbara's investigative process revealed Kevin had been telling mutual acquaintances for months before my house purchase that his parents were buying him a property in that exact neighborhood as a graduation gift. He had even brought friends to drive through the area, pointing out houses he might select when the time came. "So they created this narrative without ever discussing it with you," Barbara noted during our strategy session. "And when you coincidentally purchased in the area they had privately designated for Kevin, they constructed a story of theft rather than coincidence." "But why sue me?" I asked. "What do they possibly hope to gain?" Barbara's expression was grave. "Control. You've built a life independent of their narrative. Some parents can't handle that, especially when they've invested so heavily in a golden child narrative. We developed a two-pronged strategy legally. We would defend against their baseless claims while gathering evidence of my complete financial independence since age 16. Barbara suggested we also consider a more public approach. "Family secrets thrive in darkness," she said. "Sometimes the best disinfectant is sunlight." As the legal proceedings advanced, we obtained financial records through discovery that revealed something shocking. Despite claims of saving for Kevin's future, my parents had virtually no savings. In fact, they had significant credit card debt, much of it seemingly related to Kevin's lifestyle expenses. "This explains the intensity of their reaction," Barbara observed. "They've been financially overextending themselves for Kevin for years. Your success without their help is a direct challenge to the family story they've constructed." The night before our first court appearance, I barely slept. Everything I had worked for was at stake, not just financially, but emotionally. By morning, exhaustion had transformed into a steely resolve. My parents had never fought for me, but I would absolutely fight for myself. Preparing for court became my second job. Every evening after work, I meticulously organized documents proving my financial independence, bank statements showing regular deposits from my teenage jobs, tax returns filed independently since age 17, student loan documents in my name only, and a paper trail of rent payments and savings contributions leading to my mortgage application. Barbara was equally thorough, collecting statements from my former employers detailing my work ethic, letters from professors about my academic achievements attained without parental support, and documentation from my mortgage lender confirming I had qualified for my loan based solely on my own merit and credit history. Aunt Judy contributed her own evidence, providing childhood photos showing the pattern of favoritism, notes from family events where Kevin was celebrated while my achievements went unacknowledged, and her own written testimony about the family dynamic she had witnessed over decades. As our case built, Barbara's strategy became clear. Not only would we defend against their absurd claims, but we would also present a comprehensive counter-narrative, Exposing the truth of my journey and their treatment of me, the discovery process yielded several shocking revelations. My parents' financial records showed they had indeed been looking at properties in my neighborhood, but only after I had closed on my house. Their claim of years of planning was demonstrably false. Even more damning, we discovered Kevin had accumulated over $30,000 in credit card debt in my parents' names during college, explaining their sudden financial desperation. The family property they had vaguely referenced existed only in fantasy, a promise made to Kevin that they lacked the means to fulfill. Barbara filed a pretrial motion summarizing these findings and requesting immediate dismissal of their case. The judge scheduled a hearing for the following week. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in my most professional attire, a navy blue suit I used for important client meetings. Barbara met me at the courthouse steps, rolling a small suitcase of documents behind her. "Ready to end this nonsense?" she asked with confident determination. Inside the courtroom, I saw my parents for the first time since the barbecue. They sat with their attorney, a nervous-looking man who kept shuffling papers. My mother avoided eye contact, while my father stared at me with an expression mixing anger and what might have been shame. Kevin sat directly behind them, scrolling through his phone as if bored by the proceedings that would determine whether he received a house he hadn't earned. When the judge entered, a stern woman in her 60s with piercing eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, the atmosphere intensified. She reviewed the case summary with a deepening frown. "Before we begin," she said, looking over her reading glasses, "I want to be clear that I've reviewed the pleadings in this case thoroughly. Proceed accordingly." My parents' attorney went first, nervously presenting their claim that I had somehow stolen a property opportunity rightfully intended for my brother. As he spoke, the judge's expression grew increasingly incredulous. "Are you suggesting," she interrupted, "that the defendant had a legal obligation to refrain from purchasing property in a neighborhood her parents might have been considering for her brother, despite never being informed of this alleged plan?" The attorney stumbled through a response about family obligations and unspoken arrangements. The judge's frown deepened. When Barbara's turn came, she was magnificent. Rather than delivering a lengthy opening, she simply rolled in 3 boxes of evidence, placing them before the judge's bench with a definitive thud. "Your Honor, the defendant has supported herself financially since age 16 without parental assistance. Box 1 contains complete financial records demonstrating this independence. Box 2 contains testimony from employers, educators, and financial institutions confirming the defendant's self-sufficient path to homeownership. Box 3 contains evidence that the plaintiff's claims are not only unsupported but deliberately fabricated after the fact." She proceeded to methodically dismantle each allegation, presenting clear documentation that contradicted every claim my parents had made. When my turn to testify came, I walked to the witness stand with surprising calm. Barbara guided me through my history of independence, my career development, and the home purchasing process. I spoke clearly and confidently about my journey, occasionally glancing at my parents, whose expressions had shifted from righteousness to discomfort. The cross-examination by my parents' attorney was ineffective and poorly structured. He attempted to imply I had used family connections to advance my career but could not identify a single specific instance when pressed. My mother testified next, delivering an emotional performance about family expectations and maternal disappointment. However, under Barbara's cross-examination, her story quickly unraveled. "Mrs. Montgomery, you claim you've been planning to purchase property for your son for years. Can you provide any documentation of these plans, investment accounts, saved emails with realtors, property research?" "Well, no," my mother admitted reluctantly. "It was an understanding within the family. An understanding you never once communicated to your daughter." "Correct. She should have known," my mother insisted weakly. "Your Honor," Barbara responded, "I'm not aware of any telepathy requirement in family law." Several people in the courtroom suppressed laughs, including, remarkably, the judge. My father's testimony proved even more damaging to their case. Under pressure, he admitted the lawsuit was primarily meant to teach Lucy a lesson about family loyalty rather than address any actual legal grievance. The most revealing testimony came from Kevin, whom Barbara called as a witness despite my parents' attorney's objections. "Mr. Montgomery," Barbara began pleasantly, "when did your parents first tell you they were planning to buy you a house after graduation?" Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "I don't remember exactly. It was always kind of understood." "And yet you told several friends specifically that your parents were buying you a house in your sister's neighborhood months before she purchased there. How did you know about that neighborhood if there was no specific plan?" "I guess I just like the area," he mumbled. "So you selected the neighborhood yourself? It wasn't your parents' choice?" "Well, yeah. I told them that's where I wanted to live." "When exactly did you tell them this?" Kevin's eyes darted toward his parents. I don't know, maybe last Christmas. Barbara smiled slightly. Last Christmas, months after your sister had already closed on her house. Thank you for that clarification. After nearly 3 hours of testimony, the judge called a recess. In the hallway, Barbara was confident. They have no case, she assured me. Their own testimony contradicts their claims. When we returned to the courtroom, my parents were huddled with their attorney, who looked increasingly distressed. He approached Barbara, requesting a private conference, which the judge permitted. When they returned, Barbara informed me that my parents had offered to drop their lawsuit if I would agree not to pursue legal fees. It's your decision, she said. We can end this now, or we can push for full dismissal with fees and the countersuit. I considered the offer briefly, then shook my head. They put me through this nightmare, damaged my professional reputation, and tried to take my house. I want the judge's ruling, and I want my costs covered. When proceedings resumed, the judge didn't even need to hear closing arguments. I've seen enough, she said firmly. This court finds no merit whatsoever in the plaintiff's claims. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. She removed her glasses, looking directly at my parents. Furthermore, this court grants the defendant's countermotion for legal fees to be paid in full by the plaintiffs. The baseless nature of this lawsuit has wasted the court's time and resources, not to mention the emotional and financial toll on the defendant. She wasn't finished. I rarely editorialize from the bench, but I feel compelled in this case. Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery, your daughter has demonstrated exceptional responsibility, work ethic, and financial acumen. Rather than attempting to punish her success through frivolous litigation, you would be better served learning from her example. As we stood to leave, my mother remained seated, shock evident on her face. My father stared at the floor. While Kevin had already slipped out of the courtroom. Outside on the courthouse steps, I finally exhaled fully for the first time in weeks. It's over, Barbara said, squeezing my shoulder. And for what it's worth, that judge was impressed with you. So am I. Thank you for believing me, I replied, tears of relief threatening to fall. I didn't just believe you, Barbara smiled. I believed in you. There's a difference. As I drove home, the weight of years spent seeking parental approval finally began to lift from my shoulders. The lawsuit, as painful as it had been, had forced a final reckoning with the truth. I had been avoiding the fact that my parents would never see my worth. But now, definitively and legally, I had proven it nonetheless. The days following the court victory were strangely anticlimactic. I had won conclusively and completely, yet there was no celebration. The triumph was shadowed by the finality of what had been lost, or perhaps more accurately, what had never truly existed, a healthy relationship with my parents. I returned to work, where news of the lawsuit's dismissal had already spread. Colleagues offered congratulations but respected the complex emotions visible on my face. Terry cleared my afternoon schedule the first day back. Take some time, she said gently. Legal victories and emotional healing operate on different timelines. That evening, I was surprised by an unexpected gathering at my home. Lisa, Sandra, Aunt Judy, Uncle Mark, and several friends and colleagues arrived with food, wine, and supportive embraces. We wanted you to know you're not alone, Lisa explained, arranging plates on my dining table, which I had refinished myself the previous summer. Even more surprising was the envelope Terry handed me, containing printouts from a GoFundMe campaign my colleagues had created to help cover my legal expenses. We raised $8,000, she said. Your story resonated with a lot of people, Lucy. Your determination inspired them. Overwhelmed by their generosity, I made a decision immediately. I can't take this money. The judge awarded legal fees, which should eventually cover my costs. Then what would you like to do with it? Sandra asked. The answer came without hesitation. Create a scholarship for independent students like I was, young people supporting themselves who need help achieving their goals. This decision led to the creation of the Self-Made Scholars Fund, which I established through the local community foundation. The initial GoFundMe money grew as others contributed, eventually providing several annual scholarships. The lawsuit had revealed painful truths, but it also clarified necessary boundaries. I drafted a letter to my parents outlining my terms for any future contact: respect for my independence, acknowledgement of their harmful behavior, and family therapy if they wished to rebuild a relationship. I sent the letter by certified mail but held no expectation of response. My focus turned instead to processing the experience and growing from it. I found a therapist specializing in family trauma, Dr. Winslow, who helped me recognize patterns I had normalized and develop healthier expectations. Your ability to create stability despite your upbringing is remarkable, Dr. Winslow noted in one session. But acknowledging the pain doesn't diminish your strength. It actually enhances it. For 3 months, I had no contact with my immediate family. During this time, I reconnected with extended family members who had distanced themselves from my parents years earlier. Through these conversations, I gained context for my parents' behavior. Your mother has always measured her worth through status and appearances, my Aunt Judy explained over coffee. When you refused to play by her rules, you challenged her entire value system. Meanwhile, my professional life flourished. The focus I had previously directed toward defending myself against my family's lawsuit now powered my career advancement. I was promoted to senior agent at Horizon, with my own team of junior agents to mentor. My personal experience inspired me to start a blog about financial independence for young adults, writing anonymously at first, then gradually more openly as it connected me with others who had similar experiences. The blog eventually led to speaking engagements at local high schools about practical financial planning. 5 months after the court case, I received a letter from an unfamiliar attorney. My heart raced, fearing another legal attack, but the contents were unexpected. Kevin had applied for jobs after graduation but struggled to find employment. My parents, finally facing financial reality, could no longer support him. The letter was a formal inquiry about whether I might consider employing him at Horizon. I declined politely but firmly. 6 months post-trial, an even more surprising communication arrived, a handwritten letter from my father. The tone was different from anything I'd received from him before, humble and reflective. I've had time to think about the path our family has taken, he wrote. While I can't undo the past, I want you to know I recognize the hurt we caused. Your mother struggles with acknowledging this, but I can no longer pretend we acted appropriately. If you're willing, I would like to meet, just the two of us. After discussing it with Dr. Winslow, I agreed to meet my father at a neutral coffee shop. The man who arrived seemed diminished somehow, the authoritative figure of my childhood replaced by someone recognizably human and flawed. Lucy, he began awkwardly, I don't know where to start. The truth would be good, I replied evenly. What followed was a surprisingly candid conversation. My father explained that my mother had always struggled with anxiety about financial security and social status. Her focus on Kevin stemmed from her belief that sons were more reliable security for parents in old age, a value from her own troubled upbringing. It doesn't excuse how we treated you, he acknowledged, but I want you to know it was never about you lacking value. It was about our own fears and failings. He also revealed that my mother had been seeing a therapist since the lawsuit, confronting long-standing issues for the first time. Kevin had moved to another state for an entry-level position, finally facing adult responsibilities. If you want any relationship moving forward, I told him firmly. There are conditions: complete honesty, respect for my boundaries, and family therapy if mom wants to be involved. He nodded. Understanding this was non-negotiable, the road to rebuilding even a basic family relationship was long and often uncomfortable. My mother initially refused joint therapy, then reluctantly agreed after realizing I wouldn't compromise on this requirement. Our first session was tense, with her defensive posture only gradually softening when confronted with specific examples of past behavior. I thought I was pushing you to be your best, she claimed. No, I corrected calmly. You were pushing me to disappear. Over the following months, small steps accumulated. My mother never managed a full apology, but her behavior changed noticeably. My father made more consistent efforts to connect, occasionally asking about my work with genuine interest. The most unexpected development came 8 months after the court case when Kevin contacted me directly. He had been struggling in his new job and life without parental subsidies. I don't know how you did it, he admitted during an awkward phone call. I never realized how much they were doing for me until it stopped. It wasn't easy, I replied, neither gloating nor minimizing. Could we maybe talk sometime about budgeting and stuff? I'm kind of drowning here. This led to a cautious reconciliation with my brother. I didn't offer financial help, but I did share knowledge about building credit, living within means, and developing professional skills. Our relationship would never be close, but it evolved into something based on mutual respect rather than resentment. 1 year after the lawsuit, I hosted another barbecue. This time, I invited only my chosen family, friends, colleagues, and the few relatives who had consistently supported me. We celebrated not just my home, but the community I had built around me. During this gathering, Sandra raised a toast. To Lucy, she said, who taught us all that sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what's given to you, but what you build for yourself. As the sun set over my backyard, now featuring a garden I had designed and planted myself, I reflected on how differently this event felt from the disastrous barbecue a year earlier. The absence of toxicity made everything brighter and more genuine. In the 2 years since, I have expanded my work helping young people achieve financial independence. The scholarship fund has supported 12 students, and my blog has grown into a resource hub for others navigating complex family financial dynamics. I recently began writing a book about my experience. hoping to reach even more people who need to hear that they can build something beautiful on their own terms. My relationship with my parents remains complicated, limited to occasional family gatherings with clear boundaries. They will never be the supportive parents I once longed for, but I no longer need them to be. The family I have chosen surrounds me with genuine support, and the life I have built stands as testament to what is possible when you believe in yourself enough to keep going. To anyone watching who has faced similar family dynamics or felt unsupported in your ambitions, I hope my story reminds you that your worth is not determined by those who should have valued you most. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is believe in yourself enough to keep building, one brick at a time. I would love to hear about your own journeys toward independence in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family who didn't support your dreams? How did you handle it? Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share it with someone who might need this message today. Remember that your story isn't finished yet, and the next chapter could be your most beautiful one. Thank you for listening to my journey. I'm Lucy, and I built my life brick by brick on my own terms, and so can you.